45 this year and rock out with the Dolly Rods. Saturday, September 14th at the Floridian Social Club. Buy your ticket now at WMNF.org. Because you're awesome.
You are tuned to WMNF Radio, 88.5 FM. This is the public affairs program called Community Speaks. And I'm your host, Patro Mobili. And of course, this is my opportunity to talk to you about what's happening in your world, in your city, of course. And Irene stands ready to take your telephone calls and I can read your emails. But this is Community Speaks, and of course, nothing less than the Supreme Court's, basically, its legitimacy is on the line as we are listening to some of their decisions coming out today. But welcome to July. This is the month we give some focus to anti-war and human rights efforts. Anti-war student protests were a huge story this year, and now students are facing the threat of not getting their diplomas. We'll talk a little bit about that. You know, some students haven't called me. And also, I would take old Joe over Con Don any day, as President Joe Biden has extended temporary protection status to Haitians fleeing political violence in one of the poorest nations in the Americas. The Supreme Court has decided that Con Don is above the law for official acts, but not for unofficial acts or private acts. And now they've sent the case regarding his role on January 6, 2021, back to the lower courts to decide how to proceed. And the governor of Florida and his right-wing fascist base continue their obsession with sex. The governor has vetoed funding for much of the arts here in Florida because of what he called sex shows in Florida. But the governor has also said he will not comply with the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory on firearms. U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy issued a Surgeon General's advisory on firearm violence last week, and the advisory provides data that support the theory that firearm violence is a public health crisis in America that really poses as a serious threat to the health and well-being of the country, and suggests ways to produce firearm-related injury, reduce them, and, of course, reduce death in America. For an example, requiring safe and secure firearm storage, implementing universal background checks. But, of course, this governor has used... It's a power grab and a violation of the Second Amendment, or attack on the Second Amendment, to even follow the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory, so he's not going to comply. Meanwhile, local leaders are discussing plans for a new amphitheater in a historic black community in Tampa. State funding was requested for an amphitheater on Central Avenue at Perry Harvey Park, but it was denied. So you're welcome to call me and discuss all of this and more today on Community Speaks. And you could also send me an email. That'd be dj@wmnf.org. And maybe before I get out of here, we could talk about some summer reading, some books that you have been reading. And I've been looking at a couple of them that I might want to share with you in the weeks coming. But as I said, this is July, and we're focusing a little bit on anti-war and human rights efforts in this world, and taking your telephone calls. The number to call, of course, here on Community Speaks is 813-239-9663 if you want to join me in a discussion on all of this. And as we know, politics is essentially local, so we have to put it all in perspective and connect the dots. But, I call this obsession that the right wing has with using and hiding behind the children to force, their their laws down our throats, and their fake outrage. They manufacture crisis by using the children. But when it comes to guns and real problems that children could face, we can't get a peep out of them. We can't get them to work with anybody on anything, as we've seen with the fight that the governor wants to have with the Surgeon General over the advisory on firearms. We could certainly talk about his not willing to comply with any of that advice, and for the reasons that he gives. Maybe we're just not surprised by his antics anymore. But this is concerning how there are crass opportunists when it comes to hiding behind children, to ban books and their obsession with sex, their obsession with telling people how to live their lives and violating especially women's rights on reproductive, all of these issues, and all of those issues are going to be on the ballot. We'll have an opportunity to weigh in if we just go and participate. But we have to start sending a message back if, we have a governor that is not complying with something as simple as this because of politics. These people are obsessed with playing politics and using children in the process. I see you're already calling, but there's a few stories that I wanted to share with you, but we can go straight away to the telephone lines, 813-239-9663, so that we can get as many people in as possible. I know that there's a lot to respond to in terms of what the courts are doing and what the outcome of the upcoming elections will be, and for what reason everything seems to be blowing up right now, and people want to talk about it. And like I said, we have a choice to make. Are we gonna go with the con? Are we gonna go with the statesman? And so we got to start with Daryl here on the telephone lines today. If you want to join this discussion, give us a call or write an email. Go ahead, Daryl. You're on the Community Speaks program.
Hey, my Billy. Yeah, you're going to get this one rare visit by me that you normally would get on another day. Yeah. But I just want to say this: in our court, in this unbridled wisdom today, my understanding. Let me try to reverse this a little bit. So you're saying giving the president unbridled immunity, which they've done. Joe Biden, who is the sitting president, he has the authority to 86 and kill Donald Trump, kill Lindsey Graham, kill Ted Cruz, kill what's that crazy woman from Georgia?
MTG. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene. No! Don't get scared now. My feelings. They told us they have the right to do this now. Kill what's his name? Mitch McConnell from Kentucky. To kill all these people who standing in his way, in our way, and in the people's way who want him to be president. They've just given him the unbridled authority to do that. Murder without, murder, police, when you kill somebody, murder is one of the only crime that I know of that doesn't have a statute of limitations to it. All right. He can go ahead and do that. And, some of you who are Trump supporters, no, y'all don't have to track me down to try to do whatever to attack me. No, they just do that. They just done that.
Made sense because they're saying if it's an official act. If it's an official act, he could. If he doesn't have the ability to kill, he could hire somebody. He could hire somebody as an official act to commit murder against his political enemies.
Yeah, like SEAL Team 6. Isn't it amazing how the pendulum, it swings both ways? But that's how a pendulum does. You see, you think you're going to get what you want on one end, but guess what? the pendulum is going to swing back. I'm going to let you go, Mobili. Bye-bye.
Thank you for calling, Darren. It was great to hear from you. And that is a legitimate question. It is, again, speaking of legitimacy, the court's legitimacy itself is on the line. People are talking about it right now. There are conversations being had, this holiday season, with the focus being on revelry and 4th of July and actually all of that, celebrating 4th of July and celebrating freedom and independence. What does that actually mean for us today? What are we allowing to be done? This is the first time that the courts have had to deal with such a case. We think of Watergate and the fact that if those Republicans hadn't talked the president at that time, Richard Nixon, to step down, would we have been dealing with that then? The idea that you could wiretap people secretly in the White House as an official act, would that have been protected by this court? So the court's legitimacy is going to be on the line as we talk about their decisions and their issues. Some of the decisions they just chose not to deal with because the plaintiffs didn't have standing. They weren't going to be harmed by the law that they were trying to get overturned. But there's a lot at stake with the decisions that Supremes make because there's no law above them. And now it doesn't seem like there's a law above the last president. We're going to go to Springfield and see what Jennifer has to say here on Community Speaks. Go ahead, Jennifer. Thank you for calling.
Hi, I'm Abilene. I just, speaking of the Supreme Court, we have to look back at when Joe Biden was running last time. One of the biggest things he was talking about was expanding the Supreme Court or term limits, and that thing happened. So far, and 4 years are almost up. He's not done anything. Now they're talking about it again. It's like it's been a problem. And unfortunately, if people do not vote green and just get out of this two-party system, we're going to be stuck with Democrats and Republicans. And they do the same thing. I don't think people understand that Democrats are just like, they give a nicer version. Although I will say, on Facebook, I have been speaking with Democrats, and they can't even talk logically about things. They start swearing at me. They call me. They're really saying like really derogatory stuff. I'm like, wow. I mean, they've just like MAGA on the other direction, and they used to be the nicer one. But Obama could have appointed somebody, and they didn't stand up to McConnell. Obama should have had the right to appoint somebody. So right there, and then Trump should not have had the right. They had precedent. He should not have had the right to appoint a third judge. But this is what happens. The Democrats play this little game, and they pretend like, oh, yeah, we're really fighting for this, because they don't fight. And we've known about this for so long, and people are just like in such denial about it. And there's really no defending it. And look at Joe Biden. Look at the state he's in. I mean, he and people say, oh, he was a statesman. You just said he was a statesman. Do you know his record? He was the crime bill. He was for dividing Iraq up into 4 parts. I mean, his record is not good. Plus, he's from the corporate, welfare state of Delaware. That is the only state in our union that's just like, banking offshore for all the corporations and taxes. So, I mean, it's like, this guy is not good. He's never been good.
Yeah, comparing the two. You have to compare the two. But, you talk about the Green Party, you talk about third parties, and that's true. I mean, it's important to do that. But, it is important also to realize at this stage, at that level of, if you go third party at the presidential level, you're still going to have to work with one of those two parties. So, but if politics is essentially local, doesn't it make better sense that you have to also start locally as a Green? You have to take over these school boards because you need to fight there for certain, especially nowadays. They have made that very partisan.
Running for elections. You're talking over me, but I will say this. So just the fact that, it's easy to say, let's just run for all this stuff. I was thinking of running against Bill O'Reilly, but it's $10,000 just to get in there.
I know.
It's like and more. And we don't take corporate money.
But you got to do it. You got to do it.
We got to take corporate money?
You ain't got to do that. But I'm saying you got to run. You've got to figure it out.
We do. We do have people running for U.S. Congress and for state houses. We have many Greens in big cities on this, on their city councils. A lot of Greens are elected in Minneapolis, San Francisco, a bunch of states. But the point is, a bunch of big cities. And so we are there. It's not like we aren't running. But the thing is, we lose our ballot access if we don't run a presidential candidate. Plus, they all start with zero. With RFK in there and Chase Oliver in there, I mean, it's going to be up for grabs because, quite frankly, I mean, people are not voting for Joe because of his capacity right now. And then you just throw somebody else in there, whether people really like him or not.
You could make a capacity argument, but the fact that maybe he's not a statesman. Thank you, Jennifer, for calling. Let me get somebody else in. We can make that point. We can argue that point all day. I'll still take old Joe over Condon any day, regardless of what he voted 30 years ago, and regardless of the fact that there are a lot of people that events lead the leaders, and sometimes they make the decision based on what their capacity is at that moment in time. But go ahead, David, you're on Community Speaks. You say what?
Oh, hey, I wanted to point out what you mentioned about, DeSantis vetoing the arts funding. And one thing I find interesting with DeSantis is he is either his staff or his wife, maybe, but they almost seem to like to rule by Google search, because I almost think that he found this quote, from the Orlando Sentinel from a few years ago about the Orlando Fringe Festival having some sexual content. And it was just a review of the Fringe Festival at the time. But that's what, he and his staff kind of pulled out as justification for cutting all this arts funding. And it's kind of like what he did with Warren, too, where, Warren had signed this pledge, this political pledge, and then used it for justification to suspend him from office. I mean, I thought it was pretty harsh and kind of crazy. And I just feel like, the DeSantis is so vindictive, and he's got to get the little gotchas in there in order to justify what he does. And I think he's terrible. He makes Rick Scott look like a reasonable governor, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unnecessary fights. And, this whole thing about you're not going to light up the bridge in the rainbow colors this year for no reason. Just being vindictive, yeah. But I like the fact that they did walk that long with that giant rainbow flag.
In Sarasota, that's right.
Yeah.
I love that. That was terrific. Yeah, I thought that was the kind of a good, gotcha back,
Exactly. That's what you got to do. Because I think you're right. I think these people do play gotcha politics, and I think that they go on some of the flimsiest things that they can Google and find out about and react to, and there's really no rhyme and reason behind it except they want to have that gotcha moment, and they just want to play culture wars at any expense.
Oh, well, I would like to say, I think Google, it'd be fun to do like a fake Google ad, like governing by Google, and then get the DeSantis impersonator to talk about how he does it,
Yeah, and his communication director does troll people on Twitter like a real social media freak.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and it's more of a campaign function than it is a government function, in my opinion.
Yeah,
and like that Christina Pushaw, I mean, she's the worst of the worst when it comes to being a media, not even communicator. It's more prognosticator, I suppose you could say. And but she's perfect because I think DeSantis is the worst of the worst when it comes to politics. And I'd much rather see Trump as president than DeSantis, honestly. So.
And it's interesting, and again, how the governor has really stacked the courts here to do his bidding. So the legitimacy of the state court is really under question here.
Yeah, it is. It's very sad, and I think it kind of shows to me that the governor has far too much power now. I'd love to see the legislature, rein him in, with new laws because I think that they're feeling some of that pinch of that his vindictiveness, too. So I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I'd like to see it.
Yeah, definitely got to turn this back into a battleground state and get this steamrolling Republican Party from controlling the legislature. Maybe get some more Greens in there and get some more Democrats in there to fight these people because they are steamrolling over everybody's rights right now.
I agree. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, David. Thank you for calling.
Thank you.
813-239-9663 is the number to call. This is Community Speaks, and we're just talking about legitimacy, and the court's legitimacy is being very questioned right now, and not just the Supreme Court, but also these state courts in these red states, and how these governors are becoming less and less legitimate as they're becoming more powerful. These red state governors, the battles that they create, the manufactured outrage that they create, the manufactured crisis that they create, and as the last caller said, they can defund what they want to defund for whatever reason, and put a lot of people's lives, there's a lot of people's livelihood at risk because of their politics, and wondering if this governor just has way too much power. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. But is the 45th president above the law? And are you so afraid of an older president that we're just willing to say without proof that he's just not there anymore? Have you seen Smokey Robinson? Smokey Robinson is 82 years old, and he can outperform anybody on a live stage right now. If you look at Smokey lately, so let's not just give in to ageism. 813-239-9663 when you have a con man on the ballot. Go ahead. Ronnie from Mango. How you doing, Ron?
I'm all at it and all with it. Mobile, go grand rising to the brothers.
Yes.
Yeah. And to the audience, it's a grand rising. Every day you get up, it's not we mourning over stuff like you laying out on the table, Mobile.
Well, we don't mourn. We got to fight. Go ahead.
No, that's what I'm saying. They want to mourn. You hear it. They talking it. No, you're going to have to, man, listen. I was saying two things. One, you had a debate with a person who probably should have been litmus tested to be capable to go to the debate because of some new information that says that his credentials and stuff have been tainted by like 34 things that are morally not consistent with being in that type of office, okay? So you're going to jump over that, right? Now you're going to make the case to the other guy, he this and that. Roosevelt was in a wheelchair. Put that on the table. Right. And amen. How many times Roosevelt went? I think two, and was trying to go some more.
Yeah, they went 3 terms, but...
yeah, but I'm saying he was in a wheelchair, so we can't... I mean, that was way back then when Hitler was saying, if you defective, kill you. Okay?
That's true, he did.
Hitler said, if you a defect, you need to throw him in a hole. Okay, so now you got somebody saying the same thing, and the people repeating that mantra, Mobile. That's really bad. And what I just want to leave this, I'm going to leave it with you because I was telling my son this here. The problem is this. There's too much divisiveness. There's too much uncooperation. And whether it's 2 parties, 3 parties, or if you put 5, you just can't be up there talking about, well, they doing this, well, they doing that. Well, we're not going to do this. We're not going, and it's all for the people. How y'all just going to play this little game out forever and ever? Everybody, okay, they do the Senate. Okay, it's the Congress. No, man. We the people divided will never be defeated, but we got to do that. You have to do that because they're taking it, the onus that they can do what they want now, and it's illegitimate is the word. It's illegitimate because laws been on books, they changing them, they're doing stuff that the procedures wasn't proper. They didn't go through the proper or due process, venting that through the public, like, okay, we're going to change Roe versus Wade. Everybody vote. Where the vote was at? So that right there delegitimizes the whole process because it was for a select few, which would be a monopoly. And if you talk about any other system, when you take it and they abuse their powers, which they do under the color of we doing it for the people, under color of law, saying, okay, this is for the public or this is for the people. And then they do things. And then it creates problems because they taking the power on themselves again. Right. And they act like nobody can do nothing about it. It's
right. They're above the law.
You get, right. You get a certain treatment. Then another person, like, say, for instance, somebody that their daddy work for the post office, they got a little bit of something, and they have a different culture. They do something horrendous. They get to walk away free under some kind of liberty. Some kind of liberties that exist. But we're not privy to those. And yet they still talking about black jobs. They want to create a dilemma and keep diverting everybody, keep everybody
divided
against each other, talking about each other, each group talking about each other, each
right
group at combat with each other. And so we right inside a country that's combative and toxic. And it's hazardous. It's hazardous. Very hazardous.
Very toxic.
Yes, sir. And that's what it is. It is what it is. We can't, I mean, the guy just sit there and won't answer no questions, man. I don't, come on, man. You want me to answer all the questions, but you ain't going to answer no questions? Come on, man.
Right.
That ain't even fair right there.
He answered the question they wanted to answer. And that's a trick that, you know, we saw at the debate, and we saw this governor do the same thing at his debate. You remember in that primary debate, they would ask him a question, and especially when it comes to the migrant flights and all that, he would start answering the question that he really wanted asked, and not the question that was actually asked. Mm-hmm.
Basically, the issues he wants you to be programming.
Yeah, he wants to program.
Issues.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's what they're doing. There's no longer they just misinforming us. They're programming us with this mess, man. They're programming you, telling you this guy is more competent, which I ain't a doctor or none of those people they're evaluating, but from my purview, I don't know the guy that's in there right now. I don't know why they looking at how he's doing all that. He has a support team and staff that handle all that. That guy just, all these people are basically puppets in front of a system that we've let got out of control, and that's what we need to be addressing, and you are, and we have been. And that's what needs to be checked. And the lady that said, I'll leave you with this, the lady that said, she can't do it. No, yes, you can, because they have stuff called sponsors. And these sponsors seem to be able to put a dude on a skateboard on TV nationally and get them ranked and get them a whole Olympic and get the, what else? Anything they think of, they can get it done. Why are you saying we can't get some people in? Why was that?
Right. Yeah, I don't want to take corporate funding, but, you know, every campaign gets funding from the state also.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's churches, it's civic groups, see what I'm saying? So why are we limited to somebody taking their money? No, they're going to all point to how you got money and how you did this and that. But the thing of it is, can we get somebody to do the job and get off the rhetoric, man? It's just been this rhetoric. You're on the welfare, you're destroying you're on the social, you're destroying it, you're. Well, what are you doing? We've been paying for you to do something. You're getting a nice fat lump over there talking about what we destroying over here. You know what I'm saying? That's what's really going on. It's like you're incompetent in those capacities. If you can't get this thing running and keep it running, you're incompetent. I don't care which one of them it is. And he cannot brag that his economy was the best. That was President Obama's economy.
Exactly. He inherited. Exactly. And he messed up with his trade war with China. Not just COVID. It was his trade war with China, but also the fact that he could stand up there and rail off lie after lie after lie after lie. And people don't think that he's not crazy. You got to be a little incompetent, a little crazy if all you know how to do is lie.
Hey, it's acceptable.
Yeah, I guess.
Other people lie, that's not going to get it. But accordingly, I got to give credit where credit is due. Two things, and I should leave you with this. The court that he did go through, they didn't apply or buy, or they didn't act like I just said, like they was out of order or they did what they supposed to do with their job. They did their job. You got to give them that credit. I give them that. Now, he's made a statement himself, and I have to get everybody straight. You say he told all these lies. He did tell the truth about one. He said he did more for black people than Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln been dead so many years ago, he ain't never do this for me. So I would like just for him to correct it a little bit, say he did more for us than Reagan, than Bush, and all of them, because that little stimulus check is the only way he outdid Abraham Lincoln, okay?
Oh, but he had to be wrangled by the neck to sign on to that. Remember, he got up from the table because he couldn't get his way on everything, and he just didn't care in the end. Yeah.
He was trying to reduce, and give more cut up to the upper class, like they saying, and that's what caused the inflation. That's where the inflation is.
Right. Well, he also claimed he was trying to get bigger checks for you and me, but at the time he had just signed that tax cuts, and it was already that was already a big addition to the deficit. So I don't know how any of that was gonna work, but you get what you can get, and let's get it done and move on. Hey, thank you, Ron. Thank you for calling in.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
813-239-9663. And we got to go to, what am I going to do? Am I going to hear from Bradenton? Yeah, let's see what the anonymous person in Bradenton. I wish you would tell us who you are. I do like the fact that you are a lady. So go ahead, anonymous. What do you have to add to Community Speaks? 663. And I can hear feedback, so please turn down your radio. All right, how about you, Russell? Russell in Tampa, you tell us what's going on.
Hey, Mabili, how you doing today?
Pretty good.
How do you feel about being conned by Joe Biden?
What are you talking about?
You don't feel conned?
No, I feel conned by Don, but what are you talking about?
We know that. You go there 24/7, but you saw a Biden Thursday night, right? Do you feel like you got been bamboozled a little bit on this guy's talent and skill set for this job?
No, I don't feel bamboozled.
They've been telling you he's fine. He's never been sharper. He's
older. I mean, it doesn't matter. He still could do the job. He still knows the world. He still knows how to do the job. He can read and write. He can walk. He's still a person that's viable. You know, everybody wants to be ageist right now. Let's go and see what Art has to talk about. Art in Largo, thank you for calling.
Yeah, hi. On this 4th of July, I think we should know what happened to 56 members who signed the Declaration of Independence. For example, 5 were captured as traitors by the British, 12 had their homes ransacked and burned, 2 lost their sons in the Revolutionary War, and 2 had sons captured by the British. Now, this is all I could find for the moment. But the signatories, what they did was they put the nation's interests above their own. Mm-hmm. And the current members of our political parties, major political parties in Congress and the state legislators are blatantly putting their own interests above the welfare of our country. And the hypocrites talk about freedom and democracy. And we may be losing those this year, right after the 4th of July. Mm. So thank you for letting me express my views. I appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you for calling. It's important to understand where people are, where they are right now, what they're thinking. But one of the things that we're facing this year, or especially this month, we're focusing on are human rights issues. And like I said, Biden administration has extended protected status for up to 309,000 migrants from Haiti. That was just this past Friday. It is an 18-month extension, and that's a redesignation to temporary protected status. And this temporary status is also, you'll hear it called TPS, but is not a permanent legal status, but protects against deportation. It allows migrants to get a work permit, and sometimes they get travel authorization. And the TPS will apply for Haitians already under temporary protected status, and the redesignation will allow Haitians who have been in the U.S. since the beginning of the month to apply for an initial TPS if they've been here for a month. But the extension, or if they've been here since the beginning of the month, but the extension period starts on August 4th and runs until February the 3rd of 2026. And the Federal Register notice published this past Friday provides information about registering for the TPS. That's a Federal Register notice. Just go online for that. But Homeland Security Secretary says that this extension is needed due to the extraordinary and temporary conditions in Haiti right now, as we are providing this humanitarian relief to Haitians already present in the United States. And this is an extension, and it's published today. And so I would say go and take a look at that. But there's been reporting of the gangs have seized control of the streets in Haiti and resulting in high levels of crime and violence. We know that the Presidential Commission has named a new prime minister. The prime minister has named a new police chief. The Kenyan forces have gone to begin their deployment in Haiti to bring some security on the streets and secure Haiti as much as possible. But for those who have been living here in the United States, your temporary protected status has been extended by the Biden administration through the Homeland Security Department. 813-239-9663 is the number to call. We also talk about how politics is essentially local. In our local, if I understand correctly, I think our city council, Tampa City Council, just voted themselves a raise. But, we know that in the meantime, the city of Tampa is still working to add an amphitheater to the historic Central Avenue Business District, despite, as I said, Governor Ron DeSantis denying funding for that project in the state's budget. The Central Avenue Business District was once home to a thriving black community known as the Scrub, and it is the first spot in Tampa that the enslaved or the formerly enslaved people were allowed to land in the Palmetto Thicket. That's according to Tampa City Councilwoman Gwendolyn Henderson. And there's, this should be done to honor that history, as some people are promoting the idea of putting an amphitheater there. It is to use more of the African American influence around that particular area. And now Perry Harvey Park is a representation of that history in the present day, according to people who have been working on a lot of the projects that are now there, the Encore housing development and the from the Tampa Housing Authority. There's a lot of development that have been going on in the old Central Park district, which is seen by a lot of people as giving some props to African American history here in Tampa. And so it was not pleasing to see that some of these projects were not included in the state funding. It was requested for an amphitheater there, and as I said, it was denied. Diane Hart, who's a local representative, said that they will try again. She's a state representative. They'll try again to get the funding for the amphitheater, but there's a lot of ideas that would be a way of commemorating local history here, especially African American history, at a time when people in the state are trying to diminish that history, whitewash it, so that people, the descendants of those they think were the oppressors, will not feel bad sitting in the classroom, even though kids have not been reporting any of this history makes them, quote unquote, feel bad or feel anything like guilt or anything like that sitting in a classroom. But we've seen these efforts in education, and it's playing out in state funding, especially funding against the arts. And so we continue to look at these culture wars play themselves out on many levels. And in the process, a lot of these people are doing things to get away with things because they feel their agenda would be protected by a right-wing Supreme Court whose legitimacy is being questioned by so many people in this country right now, that is losing legitimacy, especially around these ethics issues. The Congress lost legitimacy by denying Barack Obama his ability, his constitutional right to have a hearing on his nominee. He was able to nominate Merrick Garland for the Supreme Court, but Mitch McConnell refused to even have a hearing. That the man, and it was a whole year. It was more than a year away from the next election. But, the rules change. If you had the power to do so, if you had the mathematical numbers to make a rule change, then that's exactly what they did. And once they got their useful idiot in the White House, President number 45, they were ready to do whatever they can to reverse a lot of what has historically taken place. We've seen there's a lot of backlash, a lot of white backlash against the progress that we've made. If you look at the Supreme Court's 1954 decision in Brown versus Board of Education, that shined a light on many white Americans' tenuous loyalty to the authority of the federal judiciary. In Brown, the court unanimously held that racial segregation in public education violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The justices were abundantly aware that their decision would evoke strong emotions from a predominantly white country. So Chief Justice Earl Warren worked tirelessly to ensure that the court issued a unanimous, short and readable opinion designed to calm the anticipated popular opposition. That was how the court thought its way through the 1954 Supreme Court decision. Warren's efforts were in vain, of course. Rather than recognizing the court's authoritative interpretation of the Constitution, many white Americans participated in an extended violent campaign of resistance to the desegregation ruling. So we've seen many examples of that. We look at the integration of the University of Mississippi in 1962 provides a pointed example of this white resistance. The Supreme Court had backed a lower court, federal court, that ordered the university to admit James Meredith, who was a black Air Force veteran at the time, but Mississippi Governor Ross Barnett led a wide-ranging effort to stop Meredith from enrolling at Ole Miss, including deploying state and local police to prevent Meredith from entering campus. And of course, on Sunday, September 30th, 1962, Meredith nevertheless arrived on the campus. And I remember even later than that, he had a one-man march, and someone took a shot at him. So there was always this resistance to the change. And now we're seeing that there's a organized effort on the part of legal eagles to try to reverse or to stop the monitoring process for desegregating the schools. No longer want those monitoring regimes to be in place. Let's go back to Brandon. See what DeAndre has to say. Go ahead, DeAndre. You're on. DeAndre.
Hey man. Good afternoon. It's very interesting, that timeline, because it was around the time of the decision on education and desegregation that a lot of black schools were trashed. If not, if they were kept, they then fired a bunch of the black educators and introduced a bunch of white ones. And as well, they introduced a bunch of policies to legitimize their efforts. But the strangest thing about it is somebody was, had emailed or what have you about scrubs. That's exact evidence on that right there. I mean, there are few people who reside there now that are organic to that history. It's nothing against, building a bigger, better populace, but the economic violence that was brought to accomplish that over the past 75 years is problematic. Yeah,
you mean the removal? People had to be removed.
Well, yeah, so they could put 275 in, so they could put the settlement down, so they could, reinvigorate the area, so to say. And there's a lot of loss because on top of that, people lost businesses, they lost homes, assets, they even lost grades. How do you lose a grade? And the descendants of those people are scattered around here in the rest of the country, if they're alive, because, again, economic violence and other violence. Now you have children of a huge variety, organic or not, that Scrubs platform, that are some in a growing number are engaging in violence, gun violence. So when you take the legs from under somebody and tell them to pull up their bootstraps, or if they can survive that, their descendants, aren't going to be stable. They're not going to be, able to maneuver and navigate this terrain because it's beyond bipolar. It's beyond their strength. So I had a lot more to say, but this whole thing is just warped beyond measure, and it can be fixed. But, I mean, for as much as people are experiencing, and it's sad, the gun violence, the economic violence, the assault on education, if persons who do care and find allegiance to a better tomorrow don't examine that history and decode it, I mean, they're talking about putting up an amphitheater at this point. How are we not able to litigate against those last decades of violence? How is there no one doing so? I mean, they're not presidents, maybe some board, or some, I don't know, some trust, but those are the groups that deserve the litigation. It's not they deserve an audit in comparison with historical documents that led to a lot of these tragedies. Because we're talking about annihilation of groups, and you just sprinkle some more folks in with opportunity, with the promise of opportunity, and then no one's the wiser. So that's all I got to say.
That's why history is important. So I mean, you got to know the story. That's how we know what happened to people, right?
Yeah, they dilute it. They dilute it enough to where it's unable to be examined. It's just getting rid of evidence. That's all that's been happening all this time. And now our children, and children, whether you're talking about as a boomer, your children, as a Gen Zer, or as a millennial, on and on, children, the future is being, made septic and just terrible. So I just had to express that right now.
Well, I appreciate that. Very well said, DeAndre. If people are displaced, and how are we going to address that displacement, especially when the situation, the quality of life just continues to get worse. But as I said, there's going to be some look at, beyond the amphitheater, look at putting Black history on display, especially from the Scrub area. Right now, looks like there's one church that has made itself available. The St. James Episcopal Church will be one place where they will put some of this history on display. They're going to be teaming up with the Tampa Bay History Center to put some Black history there to be shown. Be the first site, be Tampa's first Black History Museum, I understand. Let's see if we can take one more call. We're going to go to Bradenton and see what Kay has to add to this conversation. Go ahead, Kay. Thank you for joining Community Speaks. Turn your radio down. I can hear some feedback. Kay. Go ahead, Kay.
Yes, hello. I just want to say a few things. I know you're a fan of your show. The thing I want to say about Governor DeSantis is he's probably one of the worst governors we've ever had. I mean, he's a racist. He reminds, I call him Hitler too. There's books that he doesn't want, people to read. I mean, I had all those books growing up, and I think I turned out pretty good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For him to decide what you have to read and what you can't read, that's not America.
Yeah.
We should have the freedom, a right to read the books that we want to read, and for our children.
Right. That would be freedom.
Yeah, a couple more things. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a bully, and she's mean, and she needs to get out. She's a disgrace. Also, Republicans, I just can't think of one good thing that they've done for the country.
Right. Me neither, tell you the truth.
I mean, I listen to the news and I watch the news, and it's like everything that's good for the country, they vote against.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know why people don't see this, really. I mean, it's...
Makes you wonder what's really their agenda. What is the agenda?
Yeah, right, exactly, the agenda. And, you know, when Trump was president, it was all about the rich. Yeah, we'll give the rich a tax cut, but nothing went to the middle class. In fact, we were paying more taxes than the rich.
That's right. That's right. It's very regressive, especially in this state.
Yes, and then the money they got or saved, they were supposed to invest in their employees and the company, but they, didn't do that. They just put it in their pocket.
Yeah, bonuses. Yeah.
Right. One more thing, and then I'm going to go. Joe Biden, okay, he didn't do very good. I'm not really happy with his performance, but he is a good president. I think he is still able to, with his staff and his vice president, who is a very smart woman, can guide him. And, I mean, that's what you pay those people for.
That's right.
The president. So, I mean, I love Joe Biden, but to get that slime ball, Trump, never.
Yeah, I mean, especially since he doesn't listen to anybody. You couldn't get him in a room to give him a debrief about anything,
No, because it's all about him.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, all about Trump. All right, I'll let you go. You have a great holiday.
Thank you. You too, Kay.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Kay, for calling from Bradenton. Thank you all for calling. This has been interesting. Of course, we're going to continue to keep an eye on all that is happening, especially Supreme Court, because, there's these conversations do have resonance over time, and they have, lifetime appointments. You can't fire them. The only thing that can happen is they step down, and none of them appear to be ready to do that, especially when we look at the ethics cases. But the legitimacy question is going to remain, since there's nothing you could really do to these justices. There's no oversight, there's no check and no balance. And so we're going to continue to watch, and we got to see these appointees from the 45's presidency that was been appointed in federal courts and circuit courts all over this country and appellate courts, how the right wing will continue to use them to slow down the cases when it comes to Trump and really legitimize some of the most backward legislations that we're seeing in the states. And the question for Florida, is Florida going to be a red state, a blue state, or a purple state? And that's what decision 2024 is really ultimately going to be about. But are we going to wake up and start pushing back and making certain that a state that wants to appropriate the word freedom, are we going to make it live up to that? So that's the question. Of course, throughout this month, we're going to continue to deal with the issues of anti-war and human rights. And we're going to continue to watch the courts just to see just what direction this country is going in. And the question, of course, is one man in this country above the law. But we'll find out more. The court's giving its preliminary answer. When it comes to official acts, he is. When it comes to private acts, maybe not. Even though you and I, we commit a private act, of course, that should have been a no-brainer. But official acts, we'll see. And going forward, these cases that this one man is going to face, we're going to see whether or not they're going to be able to do something to satisfy this court's litmus test that if it's an official act, that he can be prosecuted. We're going to see what happens. It's 1 o'clock. Stay tuned. I think we're going to get more news from the scoop. But this has been Community Speaks. I'm your host, Patro Mobili. And keep it tuned. You're tuned to WMNF Tampa. Stay tuned for as we get back to the music next with Blaney Whalen. And it's the Music Monday.
This is The Scoop for Monday.
Hello, I'm Megan Bowman with the WMNF News.